All right, Chelsea fans, here we go. A little bit of technical difficulties, and we're back. We got it figured out. Dan is in the chat. Dan, Chelsea just finished. Chelsea won, West Ham 3. Bad result. Where do you want to start with this lineup? Right to the dagger of the result. Where are you going?
I mean, I think you have to talk about it as the context of the results, which shows that this side is very much in flux at the moment. You talk about players like Disasi who are getting a second start in two matches with basically no preseason. You have a longstanding injury. I just think that there's a lot of pieces that make up the poor result that we saw today. And ultimately, there's just a lot more work that Pochettino is going to have to do. We know it's a young side. We know it's an inexperienced side in terms of playing together. But the change from the first half to the second half was really alarming, just in how the tempo changed, the attitude changed, the intensity changed. And that's why the team got caught out and the second goal went through for Antonio. That really just, there was no response from Chelsea after that point.
I would say, obviously, a lot of agreement there, just with the frustration of the result. Just it didn't start well. I think all the way from the beginning, giving up the first goal, then fighting our way back. First half, absolutely on top of them. I think you were the one tweeting out all of the overwhelming stats. I threw one on an Olivia Buzaglo tweet as well, and it was just tough to see at that point that we were so far ahead of them, and yet, we're still behind at halftime. But there was a lot of love. We got to figure out who our penalty taker is for now, at least, Dan. Enzo.
I know. I don't think we've solved that problem. I think we had an experiment. The experiment did not go well. And I would imagine the penalty taker is 1000% a different person the next time Chelsea get an opportunity. Chelsea had converted 5 of 5 penalties that they received in the Premier League last season. So I would imagine, and I'm just kind of shocked that actually Nico Jackson didn't end up taking the opportunity. I mean, ultimately, you do want to get your striker scoring. I know I'm not a fan typically of the penalty goal total that someone has at the end of the season as counting as part of their golden boot or something of that nature, but you just wanted to get Jackson his first goal. And I felt like it was just very odd to see Enzo be the individual to come up and take it. I can't be bothered with the weak penalties, the cute run ups. Like, just smash the ball. Just please. All I want to see on a penalty is someone smashing the ball. Because at least at that point, I mean, you've faced penalties before, I would imagine, in your footballing days as a goalkeeper, Brandon. A power penalty versus something that's intending to be a little bit of a trick, to me, feels like it's always probably the better way to catch the keeper off guard.
I mean, it potentially helps, right? There is no doubt about it in that sense. The best penalty is the one that goes in, right? At the end of the day,
Fair.
that is all that matters. So I think that's what I'm trying to just wrap my head around. First one he's missed. That's not a lot of penalties. And I think someone responded to my tweet that said he missed one against the Netherlands as well. So maybe not his strong suit. Brandon with the super chat saying Jackson needs to be the penalty taker. You talked about it. The fact that Jackson didn't get a goal today was super unlucky and frustrating at the same time. It's just one thing away from making it happen.
Yeah, I mean, he's making all the great runs. He's holding up the ball well. He's interchanging extremely well. So like, ultimately, there's a lot of positives for what Jackson is continuing to do for this side. And it feels like we're close to something coming off. I mean, we saw in the 14th minute, Ben Chilwell lofts the ball over the top. Jackson is able to make contact with it, but can't get the header on frame. That was for the majority of the game outside of Enzo's penalty. That was the one goal with the highest XG potential that Chelsea had. So, I mean, we know that Jackson, we talked to Sam and others, we've watched some tape. Heading is not his strong suit, but he is interchanging well. And I just think in a sliding doors moment, if Christopher Nkunku was in this game, I think Chelsea would have handily won it in a 3-1, 3-0 type of fashion with the way he could have interchanged, particularly as we saw Sterling was missing some of that decision making in the final third. He did have a lot of really good moments in the first half. but just getting some more of the footballing IQ onto the pitch, someone who can really play with Jackson, is going to be really, really critical.
Well, we'll have to see. I turned up my audio, so you guys let me know if it's any better. I hope so. We'll try to figure this out. Back three versus back four. About that, Dan. That's a big talk, especially right now in the chat. People are a little bit concerned of what is right. I mean, I think we went from a little bit of an overreaction to Disasi being a hero to, ooh, maybe we're not really sure about him.
On the goal, it wasn't great, but I don't necessarily think that it was great for anyone. I think that when you look at how he battled through Antonio, I do think it was a good education for him in terms of there were moments where he was able to catch Antonio. There were moments Antonio caught him. And so that was fine. I thought it was interesting from a decision standpoint when we made the switch to put Mudryk on, that you weren't necessarily keeping Chilwell on, pushing him back to kind of get the back four, maybe taking Disasi off and having like the flat back four, all natural defenders. It just was odd. It was odd. I don't think it worked out as well as we would have hoped, but I also can't argue with the fact that Pochettino at the end, like, hey, let's put on Madueke, let's put on attackers and try to go actively win this game, particularly going down to 10 men for West Ham.
That is true. The 10 men didn't feel good. We can talk about a positive, though, before we break down too many different things. And that was Raheem Sterling today. It is what it is. He showed up and looked really good. I don't think we've seen Raheem this good. Definitely didn't in preseason, potentially even last season, which everyone was down. This stat from Naz is wild that you retweeted. Sterling now has won more penalties than any player in the Premier League history. He's won 24. It was right on the line. It was right on the edge. It was glad to see that this one went through. But all day, he had the quickness and the ability to create space towards the end line. We haven't seen that. And I think that's what I was so impressed by. And I was glad he didn't get subbed off, right? I think it was one of those opportunities where end of the match, you maybe just want fresh legs. Raheem was the one there to the end. Start on the right, went to the 10. When Connor came off, like, they moved him around because they wanted to keep him on the pitch. And I think that was the right idea. In a day where everything, did not look good, he was a massive bright spot for this team. Again, it's like, this is only the second match. So like, Disasi's stock dropping, Raheem's flying up, Mudryk's dropping, Enzo Caicedo okay today, but like, it's too early to tell. We need a run of form, but statistically, an eye test, Raheem Sterling was phenomenal.
Yeah, if you look at his heat map, it's almost like trailing a tropical storm or something, because it basically, if you think about it, there's the halfway line, and then towards West Ham's box, it's basically a straight diagonal right into the far right hand side of the goal. And with the heat pockets, the hottest red parts being that moment when he picks up the ball on the right hand side, and then the cut into the end where he was making all those progressive runs into the back. I mean, there were one or two crosses he put in that if anyone just pokes it, that it was going to be going in for a goal. There was particularly the one where there were three bodies in there. I do think it bounced off of someone else. So one of the three knocked it away or out of the path of the other. But there is something there. It's just the box was crowded. The players weren't necessarily getting into all the right positions with one another. We know some of these relationships are still to be formed. I mean, Raheem and Nico have not played a ton of minutes together yet. So like, that is something that, could we develop it? Could it be promising? Like, we'll have to wait and see there. But I think a lot of people reacted pretty negatively to seeing Sterling in the starting lineup over someone like Madueke or like Mudryk. And I would say, like, on the day, Sterling had a much better game relative to Mykhailo Mudryk.
Well, I agree. Huge shout out to Mr. Thurman with the super chat donation, which is very nice of you, as we hung out in Discord with you all today. Caicedo made his debut a little bit late in the match, obviously already trailing. I think a lot of people were excited to see him. Gave away the penalty, which is really unlucky. It was just a late tackle. At that point, he let the absolute villain of Paqueta just haunt us for the next week. I mean, the nonsense with him and his betting allegations, he's easily going to get suspended, yet he goes out with a banger against us before a potential suspension comes down, which was the worst. But again, Caicedo getting his first minutes, I'm going to assume not the best that we're going to see out of him.
No, without question. I mean, you're going to see plenty of people tweeting about or Xing about the lackluster substitution performance that he had today. I do think one of the benefits of coming to play for Pochettino is he does empower the players a little bit more than De Zerbi. We Brighton are very much systems, patterns of play. And so there is a little bit more freedom to exercise within this setup that Pochettino has. It's going to be interesting to see if ultimately you can quickly get him up to speed playing with someone like Enzo, Gallagher, whomever the midfield pairing is, because it would have been potentially Chukwuemeka, but we don't know the severity of his injury yet, how long he might be out for. I do think it's a little unfair to criticize like the medical department for that. Like that's a contact injury. So that's a weird one to me. I mean, yes, it does feel like Chelsea get all the injuries, but ultimately like in the game, in playing the game, like injuries do happen. It's just unfortunately like there was no luck for Chelsea today. There was no luck on the penalty situation with the Souček encroachment. There was no early on in the game. There was no real look at the offside for Nico Jackson potentially when he got ran into by Areola at the end. Like ultimately, there's a lot of things that didn't break the right way. And that to me feels more like, again, this is a game. I think if you played again, Chelsea would feel like that they would have an opportunity to have won this game.
Well, definitely frustrating day out. I'm interested to see how Pochettino responds to this one. I doubt the post-match comments are out quite yet. I want to hear what his mentality is, Dan, right? I want to hear what he is thinking in terms of, was this good enough? Obviously not. But where does he go, right? Is it as simple as missing a penalty and losing Carney Chukwuemeka? The first half and second half were night and day difference. I felt like with Poch at the end of the match, he was just kind of throwing players on at the end to try to get something to happen. But it didn't come together. Like we didn't look like a unit at the end of the game. We looked like 11 players chasing a match. We didn't look like West Ham were down a player. And I think that was a concern for me as far as like Poch managing the team and things like that. And I want to hear what he comes out and has to say about this result.
Yeah, I don't know if we've seen the comments necessarily yet, but ultimately there's going to be tough decisions on now that Caicedo's in. You have Lavia in. Chelsea is still looking to do one or two more deals before the end of the window. We know that Petrovic from a backup keeper situation or potentially a challenger for number one, given some of the rootedness of Robert Sanchez today, might be open for it might be an open competition for the starting goalkeeper position in very short order. I just think there's a lot of work still to do. I think Nick put it really well that like this is going to be a fun but frustrating season. And I think the fun, unfortunately, is going to come a little later. I think the frustrating part is going to come now. And you just hope, look, Chelsea have a quick turn. They've got Luton on Friday. Like, go and smash this team that by all intents and purposes should go straight back down to the championship next season. Like, please go and do that. That would be the best way to put everything a little bit right before you ultimately have, I think, one more match after that, and then we're into a men's international break, which is just some crazy FIFA-ness.
Well, I tell you what, a lot of conversation in the chat is about the money spent, right? There's no doubt about it. A ton of money's been spent on players. It's only the second game of the season. There's still a lot of betting that has to be done. And I think that's kind of my hedging of the bet is like, hey, let's see what Poch has to do with these players. He's still going to have to make decisions. We know that he is not done finalizing this roster. So what, if any, changes do you still expect to see, Dan?
Backup goalkeeper or challenging goalkeeper, and then some type of attacker. I think there's been the rumors with Broja to AC Milan, and if he's leaving, that means you're getting in some type of striker. what that means in terms of who that is, what that profile is. We've seen the links to Balogun recently. We know that someone like Ivan Toney is admired by the club, but he wouldn't be available until the very end of this year, beginning of next year, and it feels a little challenging to potentially have just Jackson being your only true striker, kind of main attacker. I mean, I don't even want to get to what type of terrible timeline we'd be in if we didn't have Jackson at the moment, because he's at least offering an outlet. He's making great runs. He's putting himself into a position. The only thing he's missing right now is that opening goal to basically break open the floodgates.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, to your point, second match of the season, we still got Luton Town, then AFC Wimbledon in the Carabao Cup. Again, there's got to be goals for him at some point in there. So we'll have to see, as the rest of the league, starts to settle as well, because it's been a very interesting, I think, start to the Premier League season as we look around as well. This is probably the worst result, though, for being really honest, in terms of, from our perspective specifically. But when you look at the results, this one,
red card. I
yeah,
could argue
true.
that actually could have been a straight red on the challenge that our guards made against like it really could have been a straight red, but ultimately still ended up off of the pitch. But Chelsea just couldn't. I mean, West Ham played a great game. Like, West Ham knew exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to find an opportunity to get set pieces. They wanted to leverage James Ward-Prowse as a cheat code. They wanted to break on the counter with Chelsea's game plan. They did it effectively. It super sucks, but I mean, that's the situation sometimes. It's like you don't always line up and set up the best way to take advantage of it. I think if Enzo converts a penalty, it's a completely different game, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, no, so true. Look, I think overall, an early warning shot across the bow, right? An early warning to Pochettino and the players that just because we spent a lot of money doesn't mean we deserve the victories and things like that. And that's something that they're going to have to figure out really, really quick. Again, good news. You got a week to sort it out, right? We got a week to figure out what the game plan from Luton is. Thank gosh. I believe Luton didn't even play this week, did they? Because it was postponed.
They did, yeah. So that is also like a really interesting thing with Luton's ground not being up to snuff, as it were. Thankfully, we are inviting them to come play at Chelsea, and again, they got pummeled 4-1 versus Brighton. They had played a couple of other friendlies. I think they only won one of their preseason friendlies. So that is something to kind of keep in mind. Maybe two. They think they played Sheffield Wednesday, and they beat them 2-1. So, like, just kind of thinking like they're not in great form. They have not done a lot of great business. So this would be something where you would expect Chelsea should roll in and end up having a good game and be able to wipe the stink of this game off them. But we need to score the goals to make that happen.
Yeah, obviously a huge, huge part of it. Um, a lot of people talking about Mudryk and his lack of an effect in this match, and I get it. He looked so good in preseason, but you threw him on at the end, and he didn't have Chilwell behind him. The shape had changed completely at the end. Is Sterling, who's known for creating things with his dribble, not with his pass. He did still create some chances. He didn't get that one-touch finish with the side volley that skied, but I mean, having him come on at the end when it was very chaotic, I think is tough to just judge on him, especially because we saw he was so good in preseason. I'm gonna say, hey, give him a few more opportunities. Let's see how it goes. But the whole team was disconnecting at the end of that match. We did not finish strong whatsoever.
It was odd to see how much that disrupted the left hand side, and there clearly was not any of the same attacking threat that when Chilwell was in that Mudryk was capable of offering, even though like things like SofaScore, like, oh, Mudryk's a 7-2 and Ben's a 7-1. I mean, Ben was able to get involve himself in the attack, was able to put forward potentially what would have been a great assist for a goal if Jackson would have scored that. So that was interesting to see. I'll be curious to see if something like Madueke can get up to speed. Does Sterling maybe head to the left hand side and get to play from the left versus, you know, Mudryk potentially starting over there? That would be interesting from a consideration standpoint. But look, there's a whole lot more we're gonna have to figure out. I'm gonna go figure out what I order at brunch while you talk to the rest of the people here, and we'll get another pod out tonight.
Awesome. All right. Well, appreciate you, Dan. I'm going to continue to drive this one forward, and pretty much just going to drive off chat. So let me end that portion and see what you guys have for me. Let's see. All right, look, the formation, right? Back four versus back three. I think that's where we're kind of trying to figure out what the best situation is. Is it because of injuries? Why are we playing back three? Poch said, even Sam, CFC Central, said it was a back four where Levi Cole was the left back. I'd say if that's the situation, Levi Cole does not look comfortable as a left back whatsoever, does he? Especially when compared it to Ben Chilwell playing out there. Even Ian Matson, who did not come on at all, which was interesting. I think that Poch is just worried, especially when you play a team like West Ham, who have a ton of 6-foot+ giants back there, that we can't defend on set pieces. And that's why he wanted to essentially have 3 center backs out there and squeezed Cole into a left back spot. And that may help. The side of it is Cole doesn't have the dynamism of a left back, nor should he. And I think that that's a trade-off that Poch had to make. The other thing I would say is, what about Malo Gusto today, right? Made his day, essentially got his first start for Chelsea. I thought he was quiet. I don't know if he didn't have a lot to do. What do you guys think in the chat as far as Malo Gusto? A little sloppy in possession at times, but his recovery speed is so fast, right? His ability to get back and to make a tackle is so impressive. The problem is sometimes he's recovering off of his own bad pass. Right. And that's something he's going to have to figure out. But there's definitely, and I thought that was a struggle, so he was average is what I would say. Right. Like nothing amazing, but it's not like he hurt us, I would say. Robert Sanchez in goal, made a couple good saves, obviously gave up, 2 goals. I don't know. I think, to Dan's point, still a bit of a weakness, or jury's out with this group. The Petrovic from New England Revolution MLS links have come up pretty quickly. He's still young. He's done well in the Premier League. It's got to be a big adjustment. I'd be interested to see. I don't know if he's the one. I think Sanchez could maybe even hold him out for a year. We saw Gaga Slonina come from MLS and he's now in the Belgian league. So I don't know what you're going to get after George Petrovic if he comes in, but the goalkeeping situation, I thought, kudos to Sanchez. He was brave. He came out on that 50-50 and put his hands and face in front of the attacker of the West Ham when the ball dropped inside the 6. That's not something Kepa would have done. So I'd say we definitely made an improvement. Are we where we want to be? Probably not, but you got to give him a little bit of time. He's only been with the team about 2 weeks, if that. But we'll have to wait and see how that goes. I want to look at the bench real quick to see the subs we did make. So Mudryk came on, Caicedo came on, Madueke came on, Burstow came on, which left Ian Matson on the bench, Cucurella on the bench, Oguchuku on the bench, and Bosher Humphreys. So center back on the bench, a defensive mid on the bench, and then Cucurella and Matson, both left-sided players. They're the ones who didn't come on. I'm not really sure what, if anything, we would have done differently from the subs perspective. Essentially, Mudryk got the nod over Matson is how I'm reading that. I don't know how you guys look at the bench and the changes that Poch made, but it looks like a lot of people are pretty unhappy with how Poch managed this one. So you guys let me know what you think as far as that. I don't know. The Chilwell thing, he comes out, then our attack goes flat more or less. Is it a fitness thing, right? You just lost Reece for weeks. Do you think that they're concerned, right, that all of a sudden they might have to lose their captain and vice captain, so they're playing it careful? I don't know. We'll have to figure out and see what happens because, as far as I'm concerned, It all just died after Chilwell came off. Sorry, I was trying to grab the post-match comments from Poch if they're out there. Got to go to our boy Naz's page. Naz absolutely slating the Chelsea players, saying Mudryk was a 3, Caicedo was a 4, Disasi was a 4. Not really surprised there. Does anyone have a link to the Poch post-match comments if they're there? Throw it in the chat. So Taylor says, I wonder if adding a bunch of new players has upset the squad dynamic from how it was in preseason. I mean, potentially, right? When you add good players, you add Lavia, you add Caicedo. I mean, who else have we added since Disasi since preseason? It sounds like from what we hear, the vibes are good in preseason, right? It sounds like the vibes at Cobham are good. The only kind of hedging I would say for Poch is he's big on fitness. I'm sure he's going to say this team is nowhere close to where he wants them. And if they're not close, that means they're still working on fitness. That means they're going to be lacking some sharpness. Does that mean that they're going to be struggling in the sense of doing what he wants them to do? I would say that we were much better with our defensive pressure. Our ability to close down the ball, our ability to step to players in the defensive half were way, way better than it was last season. Also, last season was about as bad as it possibly could be. But I think that, there is progress in there. I wonder how long it's going to take for Poch. I wonder if he'll say that in the post-match presser. Hey, are we 2 weeks away, 3 weeks away, 1 week away? What does he expect out of the players that needs to change? That's what I want to know. The back 3, back 4 thing is a bit goofy. I think he wants a taller central mid in an ideal world. I think back when Mourinho was there, what did he say? He wanted like 5 or 6 tall players on the pitch to defend set pieces. If you got Enzo and Caicedo in the middle, even Enzo and Gallagher in the middle, you lack height there. So essentially you had Colwill, Silva, Disasi, who could defend set pieces. You would like to think Chukwuemeka is decent in there. You'd like to think Nico Jackson could be a big body. But Connor was the one marking Aguero who got the goal, right? So clearly there were mismatches on the pitch. You've got Souček, you've got Soufal, you've got Zuma, Aguero, Antonio. I mean, they've definitely got way more height than we do, and that's going to create mismatches. So that's something I think Pochettino and no. Anyone, do we have the link to Poch in the pre-chat or post-match comments yet? I think we're still a little too early for that, unfortunately, but tough day out. Let me just pull up Naz's match ratings real quick, and we'll kind of go from there. We still got our full podcast coming tonight that'll be out tomorrow. But instant reaction here. Robert Sanchez 5, Malo Gusto 5, Disasi 4, Silva 5, Colwill 5, Enzo 5. He just picked 5s for everybody? Naz, come on, man. Connor 5, Raz 8, Chukwuemeka 8, Chilwell 5, Nico Jackson 7. Those are the starters. And then for subs, he said Caicedo 4, Mudryk 3, Madueke 5, and didn't have a score for Mason Burstow. Tough, super harsh from him, but I don't really expect much differently from Naz. He's always been a tough critic. Not the best day out when you lose 3-1. There's not a lot of bright spots. But in the chat, is there anything that you guys are looking forward to or feel like, hey, there's a little bit of positive momentum? I mean, Raz seems like the bright light. You wanted to say Caicedo because of his debut, but then he gave away the penalty. Chilwell looks really, really good. What else? What else stood out as like a positive today? I'm trying to think through the team and the match, and the way it ended has such a sour taste, and I think all of our mouths that we haven't really, been able to find things that we enjoyed. Nothing. The chat's having nothing. And that's fine. I get it. I get it. I hear you guys. All right. Well, here's the deal. Ton of content coming at you this week. We've got the match reaction. Matt Law is going to be back this week. Him and I are going to be chatting. If you want to do more stuff like this, head over to our Discord. You can join through Patreon as well. As you guys know, right? If you're looking for Chelsea fans to hang out with, you can always do that. Drop a link in the description to Patreon. Discord is where Dan and I were hanging out during the match today. And then you can just hang out with us on social media, share, subscribe to YouTube. If you're new here, definitely subscribe. We would really, really appreciate that because, like I said, we're just out here trying to rally for this season. It's going to be a long one. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Sterling is the only positive note, I guess, is how we're going to end it. But full pod, we'll have a little bit of time to breathe. We'll read Poch's comments and we'll go from there. But appreciate all you Chelsea fans out there. For all the non-Chelsea fans in the chat, ribbing us, especially West Ham fans. Appreciate you boosting our platform and giving us more engagement. But anyways, that's out for me. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great one, Chelsea fans. A lot of content this week. Make sure you're subscribed everywhere, as that's where we'll be bringing the fun. We'll talk to you later.